So, as I did prepare this week and got ready, and asking the Lord what to share, I found that it's really easiest for me to share on something that I'm going through and to speak on what the Lord is teaching me right now. And so I've kind of been on this journey with the Lord, and I felt very strongly that He wanted me to share with you a little bit about my life and where I'm at and kind of this season I'm in. And so I hope as I share that it's meaningful to me. I hope it speaks to you. I hope you can take something from it. You know, I think we've all been at a place like this at one point in our lives, and so hopefully as I share my story and share what the Lord's laid on my heart, you'll be able to take something away from it. So we're going to look at two scriptures, and we're going to start with that, and these are really going to be the foundation of what I want to share this morning. And the first one, most of us probably know by heart, but it's going to be Proverbs 3, 5 through 8. So go ahead and turn there with me, or if we can put it on the screen, look at that. Proverbs 3, 5 through 8 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord. Turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones." So that's our first one. The second one is going to be in Psalm. And it's Psalm 37, verses 3 through 7. Psalm 37, verses 3 through 7. "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way and over the man who carries out evil devices." So our subject today is going to be trusting in the Lord. And this is a huge topic, right? When we say we trust in God, we can go many different ways with that. But as I said, as I began to ask the Lord what He wanted me to share this morning, He said, apply it to your life and how I have not done a good job of trusting in the Lord in these aspects of my life. And what He was showing me was that trusting in Him is really foundational to our faith. But when I gave my life to Christ, I had to have faith and I had to believe in Him, right? And so I said, okay, Lord, I have this faith. I believe that You died on the cross for my sins. I believe that You rose again. I believe that You can save me. And I believe if I ask You into my life, I have a relationship with You. I believe all that. But He started saying, belief and this faith that you have is not necessarily the same as trusting in Me. And so I started kind of digging into that, and I'm like, all right, Lord, what do you mean? And He said, well, one of the differences between faith and trust is faith is the belief, but trust requires action. And so if I say, for example, if I say, okay, my wife Vanessa, I trust you, I have to act that out, right? I have to prove to her, well, I don't have to prove, but I have to show that I trust. My actions are going to show that I trust her. And so I can't just say I trust you because my actions are going to prove whether I actually trust her or not. And so God has been saying to me it's been a few years, Jason, I know you believe in me. I know you have some level of trust in me, but your actions aren't always lining up with what you say. And my first response, I find myself arguing with God a lot. I'm like, God, no, I trust you 100%. And He says, okay, you trust me completely. So why do you feel, if you trust me completely, why don't you always obey what I ask you to do? If you trust me completely, why do you feel tired from striving so hard to make things happen on your own? Why aren't you living in complete peace through difficult seasons of your life? Why do you end up complaining? I'm like, okay, God, stop. I get the point. Right? Like, enough. I see where you're going with this. And so I had to go before Him and I say, all right, Lord, if I'm not acting this out, if I'm not trusting You completely, you have to show me how this works. You have to show me what I need to do to put my full trust in you. And so he started showing me these 3 areas of my life that I needed to work on. And that's what I'm going to share this morning. So the first season that I've been learning to trust in him is walking in obedience to his instruction. If there's no trust, it's difficult to obey. All right? If I have a boss, if I have somebody, any authority over me, it's really hard to obey them if I don't fully trust them. And the same goes with God. If I can't fully trust him, it's hard to walk in obedience. For example, in 2012, my family and I lived in Pennsylvania. I had 15 years on a job. Our girls were in school. They were about 6 and 9 at the time. They were going to school. And the Lord asked us, he said, okay, I want you to quit your job. I want you to pull your girls out of school. I want you to sell your house, and I want you to move to St. Croix to be a full-time missionary. That takes a level of trust that for me did not come naturally. That takes a level of obedience that I was like, okay. So I immediately started throwing these questions at God, right? I said, well, Lord, how are you going to provide the money for us for this time on the mission field? If you're asking me to quit my job, I don't have that much in savings that I can support myself for the next 5 years. Lord, I failed high school. How am I going to teach my kids and give them a good education if you want us to homeschool them? Lord, I'm a vehicle salesman. What qualities do I have to offer on the mission field? You know, I've never led anything. I don't know what I'm going to do. I sell vehicles. What do I have to offer? And I started saying, Lord, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand how this will work. And he said, as he normally does when he calls us to obey, he's like, Jason, this is what I called you to. Are you going to trust me and walk in obedience? See, going back to our text in Proverbs, right? It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. When God asks for obedience, we can't lean on our own understanding. And that's what I wanted to do, right? That's what I was trying to do so hard at that time. Because that's easy, that's natural for me to say, okay, this is how I see the situation. These are my solutions, right? And if I don't understand, I just turn to my own understanding instead of trusting him. And then I can be quick to run the other way and say, nope, I don't understand how it's going to work out. I'm not going to do it. And yet, as I just read, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. The Bible's filled with some great examples of people who walked in complete trust and in obedience above what they could understand. I think of Abraham when God told him, Abraham, I want you to take your only son, Isaac, whom you love. I want you to take him to the mountain and offer him there as a burnt offering. Offer him as a sacrifice to me. And I'll tell you when and how it's going to happen, right? The very next verse says, Abraham rose early in the morning and prepared for his journey. I mean, what a step of faith, right? Complete trust in God, where he said, I want you to take your son and sacrifice him. And Abraham said, okay, Lord, I trust you. And God came through, right? Trust beyond what he could understand. Abraham could understand, and God came through for him. I think of Noah when God said to him, I'm going to wipe out the earth. I'm going to wipe out everyone on the earth. And he said, go make yourself an ark, right? It had never rained at that point. He was like, what's an ark? And instead of leaning on his own understanding, he trusted God. It said Noah did all this and all that God had commanded him, and God came through. See, time and time again in the Bible and in my life, God has always proved himself trustworthy. And yet so many times I refuse to trust God in this act of obedience because I don't understand how it would work out. What God is bringing me to a point is that I need to realize that it's our human wisdom, my human wisdom amounts to nothing before him. How many times, again, do we try and say, Lord, Lord, what about this? What about this? And he says, your wisdom is nothing. 1 Corinthians 3:18 says, let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. Lean not on our own understanding. I said that God always proves himself faithful in my life, and I'm blessed to say that even when I threw all those questions at him, even when I said, Lord, I don't know how you're going to take care of us in the mission field, I don't know how you're going to take care of my kids, and all these things, I don't know what I have to offer, back in 2012. And at that point, he told us to come for 5 years. You can do the math. We're still here. We're still in missions. We walk in faith, and we have no idea where the Lord's going to take us, right? But beyond what I could understand, he made it all come through. He showed me that I do have some qualities that I can offer in the mission field. He came through and provided a great schooling for our kids. He's come through financially and given us what we need to live. And it's like, man, Lord, you're amazing. I don't know why I questioned you. And even though he proves himself faithful, I still find myself questioning him when I walk in obedience. So maybe there's something in your life right now that God's asking you to walk in obedience to, but you're trying to lean on your own understanding of the situation. Walk in obedience, and he's going to show himself faithful, right? Our text in Psalm 37 says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act. So that action of commit comes first, right? We commit our way to the Lord, then the action of trusting him, and then we know that he is going to act afterwards. It's not easy to do, and I'm still trying to learn it, but that's where God was at with me, in the area of obedience. Our second area that he was showing me is trusting him in the waiting times. When I've gone before the Lord and I prayed and I asked him to answer a question for me, when I've taken a prayer request to him, and when I feel like I'm not hearing from him in regards to questions I keep asking, when I feel like God's given me a promise, but it's taking years for it to happen, and I keep saying, God, did I hear you correctly on this? God, I'm waiting on you to answer. I'm waiting on you to fulfill a promise. And this can be one of the most challenging aspects of trusting God. At least for me, it has been. The obedience is hard, but this waiting on the Lord has proved that it's even harder for me. Because I say, God, why don't you just move the mountain? You say that if I trust in you and if I ask you, you will give the desires of my heart, you'll move these mountains. And it seems like nothing's happening. So how do you expect me to trust you when these things aren't happening? Isaiah 40:31 says, but they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That has been a hard verse for me to understand. Because I've said so many times, I said, God, when I'm waiting on you, I feel like my strength is going the opposite way than of what you're telling me is going to happen. I feel like I'm losing strength. I feel like I'm being beat up by just sitting here waiting on you to answer my prayer and to come through for me. So how does this work? How does waiting on you make me renew my strength? And I wrestled with that question for a long time. Again, Psalms 37:7, our text says, be still and wait patiently for the Lord. So waiting on God, it doesn't feel like it does that for me. Back to an example in my life, and a personal example here. As I already told you, we moved into missions. We moved here in 2012 with an organization called Youth with a Mission. It's a nonprofit organization. It's all around the world. It was established here in the mid-1980s. My family and a couple other people moved here when I was really young. They started a coffee shop downtown in Christiansted and started the YWAM ministry. And over the years that I wasn't here, we moved back in 2012, but since the beginning, we've done summer camps for children. We've partnered with different churches in the community, the coffee shop. We've run schools. You know, YWAM's been involved in the community in many different ways since then. In 2016, When we moved here, we had no idea that we were going to become the leaders of the ministry. I came to serve, like I told you before. I really didn't think I had anything to offer to the mission field. I was a volleyball player and a vehicle salesman, but God was faithful and showed me that I do have some things. And in 2016, he put us in a position of leadership that I would have never expected. And for the first few years, up until about 2020, 2021, right around COVID, we were doing the same things that YWAM has done their whole time here on the island, the camps, the things I told you about. But in 2020, God gave me a slightly different vision for the ministry. And we were in a prayer time with, we had about 10 staff at the time, and we were in a prayer time, and the Lord showed me this vision of a community center. And it was adjacent to the property that we have now in Sunny Isle. And it was this large building where lots of people were coming in for just different community events, for sporting events, a place where people could gather and just bring unity to the community there, to the island, and where God could be glorified. And this was exciting for me. I was like, yeah, this is amazing, Lord. This is a passion of mine. I would love to see St. Croix have something like this, right? So I shared the vision with our staff, and I shared the vision with our board of directors, and I got a lot of support. Everyone was like, great, we're on board with this. Let's move forward with trying to purchase this land. And the Lord said, okay, there's 8 acres right there. I want you to make an offer on the property to purchase it. Going back to that step of obedience, right? That was a big step. It's not like we have the money to buy just all this land sitting around. So it took a step of faith and a step of obedience in trusting the Lord and moving forward with that. And in June of 2021, we put a purchase on the property. As of this morning, I don't feel like we are any closer to owning that property than when we put the offer on it back in 2021. As we all know, some things can take time here in St. Croix. And this is one of the things that is taking some time. And there's no community center, right? And so I start saying to the Lord, all right, God, you gave me this vision, right? This was your word. This isn't something I was sitting there and I made up in this prayer time. So God, why aren't you making this happen? Why is this not happening? Because I see that this could be an amazing thing for the island. I see that your glory could be brought to so many people through this. And you start saying, God, did I even hear you correctly, right? I start questioning myself when nothing's happening, when nothing's moving forward. Maybe I didn't hear the Lord right. So how do I trust God in this waiting? Almost 4 years. How do I sit there and say, all right, Lord, how do I hold on to this vision or this promise that you gave me? How does this waiting time not beat me up and take my strength away and make me feel like I'm going down, but how does it renew my strength? How do I gain strength through this time? Because some of the things that have happened during this time is we've seen most of our staff. At that time when we got the vision, we had like 10 staff. Right now there's 4 of us, right? And God's called them on to different things, and I'm really grateful that he released them. But this waiting time has got progressively harder. I've had to cut back on some ministries because we don't have as many people. We have a 5-acre property, an old plantation there that takes a lot of work, a lot of yard mowing, a lot of cutting tan. It's an old building that is falling apart constantly. Electrical issues, things like that. So during this time, people have started saying, wow, so you're the leader, huh? What's going on over there at YWAM? I had somebody just this last week come to me and they said, man, shame to see this place look so dead around here. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, I don't really think it's dead. I just think it doesn't look the way it used to a few years ago. And they didn't mean any harm, right? They were comparing it to the way it was when they had come to camps and when they were there for a while. So I wasn't offended, But they said, then the next thing was, wow, it really makes you wonder what happened here. I was like, okay. Well, what happened was I started waiting on the Lord. And I can't really tell you what else happened, you know? So anyway, it's been a challenge. And my cry to the Lord has been, God, I want to trust you in this. I really do, because I believe you gave me something, and I believe you gave us a vision. But it's so hard to trust when I don't know when the end result will be, or I don't know when this season of waiting is going to end. God, if you just tell me in October of 2025, this property is going to come through and you're going to start building, great, I can wait, right? I can trust you, I can wait. If you just tell me when that's going to happen, I'm good to go. God says, no, I'm not going to tell you. You know, I'm not going to tell you how this is going to play out. I need you to trust me in this waiting time. And I've been honest with God. I said, God, I don't know if I can wait any longer. Over the last couple years of leading, when it's hard to know kind of where the vision is going and what is happening, I've told the Lord, I'm ready to move back to Pennsylvania. I'm ready to go get a job where I know I can count on. I know I can count on a paycheck. I know you can tell me what to do. And I know what's happening the next day, because, man, when I don't know what's happening tomorrow, it is hard to trust. So what does that look like for you? You know, is there something that the Lord's been asking you or telling you about, something that it doesn't look like he's answering? Is there a promise he's giving you that you're waiting on him? Is there something that you're about to give up on? My encouragement is simple. I'm going to get to the good part here of what God's been showing me. He said, don't give up on me. And here's what he wanted to show me in the midst of the waiting. So just recently, as I continue to doubt and get impatient, he asked me a simple question. He said, Jason, what is the greatest commandment? Ooh, this one's easy. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And he said, okay, if that's all I ask of you, can you do that each day for me? Can you wake up each morning while you mow the yard, while you cut tan, while you have 4 staff, while you're not sure what's happening next, can you wake up each day and love me with all your heart, soul, and mind? Whew. That's powerful, right? It's so simple, so just obvious, and I know these verses, but God just put it to me in a new way. He's like, this is what I want from you. Deuteronomy 10:12 says, now Israel, what does the Lord require of you? But to fear the Lord your God, walk in his ways, to love him, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Our text, Psalm 37:3, says, trust in the Lord, do good, dwell in the land, befriend faithfulness, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Again, God was saying, man, Jason, like, you're waiting on me, right? This is all I'm asking of you. Everything you do today, everything you put your mind to, if you're going to work, whatever it is, love me with all your heart, soul, and mind. So how do I get closer to God in the waiting times? How do you get through a season where it feels like God isn't answering you? He says, draw closer to me. Grow in your intimacy with me. Wake up each morning, spend time with me, spend time in my word. Fear me. Live righteously. Whatever you're doing today, do it with all your heart, soul, and mind. And delight yourself in me. And that's how the Lord renews our strength. That's the answer to my question in saying this verse where, Lord, you say waiting on you renews my strength. That's the answer. If I'm able to do that in the seasons of waiting on the Lord, and I grow closer to God during that time, then he's going to renew my strength. He's going to bring me closer to him and into this area of fully trusting him, that no matter what happens, the end result is in his hand, right? And God is saying, you grow closer to me and let me take care of all that stuff. And so going back to that verse, right? Those that wait on the Lord, he will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings as eagles. They will run and not be weary. That's the answer to that. A biblical example, as I was thinking, Lord, who in the Bible did this really well? Who trusted God in this waiting season? And the story of Joseph came to my mind. The Lord gave him a dream when he was young of his brothers and his father bowing down to him, and that he would rule over them. But it took years for that to be fulfilled, right? If you know that story, he was sold into slavery by his brothers. His father was told that he was killed by an animal. He was taken to a different land. He was a slave. He was thrown in prison for years. You know, it looked hopeless for Joseph. I can imagine him at the bottom of the pit where his brothers threw him saying, Lord, I'm going to die here. But you gave me this promise of ruling over them someday. How is this ever going to happen? He was in jail, right? Lord, did I hear you correctly? Just things like one after another, these things are happening to me. How can I trust you? How can my strength be renewed when I wait? And instead of giving up on God, he said, I'm going to commit my way to the Lord, just like our verse. I'm going to trust in him, and he will act. And he will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Joseph committed everything he did to the Lord in his master's house. No matter if he was in a prison, in the pit, whatever he did, he committed it all to the Lord, and he trusted him fully no matter the circumstances. And God was faithful. So I don't know when this season of this community center is going to come to an end, or the season of waiting on the Lord. You know, I know that even this week I had a small testimony that I got a phone call from someone who wants to help us with a different piece of land that is really close to us. And they're not ready to sell it yet, which is fine, but they want to talk to us about moving forward with us being able to use the land. And just even that small thing was a testimony to me as I said, Lord, how can I wait on you for this big vision? God was like, thank you for drawing closer to me. Thank you for pressing into me. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what is to come. And so, again, I haven't been perfect at this, right? I haven't been great at this, but God is bringing me on this journey of trusting him in this season of waiting. And in that time, I've committed to myself to commit every day to him and say, I'm just going to grow closer to you. So again, that's my challenge in this season of waiting. If you're in a season of waiting, if you're waiting for the Lord to give you an answer to something that you've just been saying, Lord, why aren't you answering this question? Give that to him and say, Lord, I'm going to trust you fully. I'm going to move forward and commit every day to you no matter what it is I do. So, first season is obedience, trusting God in the obedience. Second is in the waiting. And the third season that God has been showing me is trusting him in the difficult times. So these seasons are all difficult, right? They're all difficult times. But when I talk about difficult times, I'm talking about kind of like the hurricanes of life. Maybe it's an actual hurricane that comes and hits the island, like we had in 2017. You lose your house. You know, we lose power for a while. Maybe you lost your roof. Something got destroyed. Maybe it's a family member that is diagnosed with an illness, maybe cancer. Maybe it's you that are going through some medical issues. Maybe we've lost someone in a car accident. We've had someone in a car accident. You know, all these things, these challenges, these difficulties in life. Maybe you're about to go through a knee replacement, and you're terrified about it. And I don't want to, again, I want to use some things from my life as an example, but I don't want to compare my simple knee replacement to somebody losing their home or something like that. So that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to say that it's same as losing a loved one or going through a medical condition, but this was real to me recently, so that's why I'm sharing this example. Back in February, I had the surgery done, and honestly, I thought that it was over for me. I dealt with a lot of fear, and I did not do a great job of trusting God through this process. I was pretty sure when I went in that morning I was going to lay down, and they were going to put that little mask on me, and I was going to go to sleep. And the next thing I knew, I would be face to face with my Lord. Kind of laugh about it now, but I'm being honest. I was even so close, and I even dealt with so much fear that I debated the night before writing this letter and hiding it in my sock drawer so that my wife and my girls would find it after I was gone, and they would know how much I loved them. I'm telling you, I was scared. And God showed me that fear is not of me. That is not a fear that I need to be living with. That is not from the Lord. And that kind of fear tells me I'm not trusting God to take care of me or to take care of my family, even when these things happen. I have another example of just kind of trusting God through these difficult times. A few years ago, in 2016, when we became the leaders of YWAM St. Croix, it wasn't an easy transition. And the previous leaders, they moved on. But through that process, some things happened where we were accused falsely of some things. And our name was kind of dragged through the mud, and they said we were doing things just to be in leadership, that type of thing. And, I mean, that is another really challenging thing to go through when you're being falsely accused of something, when somebody's saying something that you did, and you're like, Lord, we're innocent here. We didn't do anything. Why is this happening to me? Thankfully, we got through that. We just had to put our trust in him and say the fears of what the outcome is, the fears of what's going to happen when people run our name through the mud or they're coming after us, the fear of me going to a surgery, I just need to give that to you, Lord. And when we face these difficulties, right, that's what we have to do. We have to choose that we're going to trust God no matter our circumstances. See, at the beginning I said trust is an action, right? So maybe I have misunderstood sometimes that trust can be a feeling. But trust is not a feeling. And we have to understand that if we base our trust on how we feel, okay, I feel like I can trust you, I feel like I can trust God, it's not going to work out there. Because we have to have that action. We will not always feel like trusting God, but we have to take the action to say I'm going to do it whether I feel like it or not. And if we base our trust just on the feelings, then when the difficult times come, we end up relying on our own earthly wisdom. We rely on our own understanding when we say, God, I don't feel like it. I got to take this into my own hands, right? And I rely on my own earthly wisdom instead of his godly wisdom. What is his godly wisdom? Fear the Lord. Be not wise in your own eyes, Proverbs 3:7 from our text. Be not wise in our own eyes, fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Somebody that in the Bible that did a really good job of this would be Job. I don't know if you all know the story of Job, but he was one of the greatest people. The Bible says he was one of the greatest people of his time in all the earth. He had thousands of animals. He had 7 sons, I think 3 daughters, and one day it was all taken away from him. It was all burned up in one time. All his livestock, all his children died. Terrible tragedy, right? Not long after, Job's body was struck with sores. It says from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And all his friends, those that were around him that he didn't lose in this tragedy, all those that were around him and his wife said, Job, just curse God and die. Right? What are you doing? Why are you trying to get through this? How can you trust God? Just curse him and die. I don't know what you've done to deserve this, Job, but it must have been something horrible. Job's saying, no, I know I'm a righteous man. And Job told them He said, you speak as one of the foolish, right? You're talking earthly wisdom here. I would never do that. And the Bible says in all of this, Job did not sin. See, Job had such an intimacy with God that when these hurricanes came, when these terrible tragedies came, he was able to say, my Redeemer lives. And I know that at last he will stand upon this earth. I mean, I haven't been through anything, and hopefully none of you have been through anything close to what Job went through. And Job is this just amazing example of someone who said, through all that, I still trust God. Man, I feel so embarrassed, ashamed. I feel so just like, man, God, how can I not trust you just through a simple knee surgery? You know, why am I so fearful of this? Because I know that you are in control. So are we at a place of intimacy with God that when our lives feel like we're falling apart, when we don't understand the earthly outcomes to these situations, can we say that God is all I need to make it through, and I know that my Redeemer lives, that I trust God completely? I needed to go before God and ask forgiveness for these different seasons, right? For these different things that God was teaching me, and especially for the fear that I had going into this surgery. I needed to go before him and ask forgiveness and say, Lord, I'm sorry that I didn't trust you the way that you asked me to. Job was able to do that. He was able to stand before the Lord and say, I trust you. I know that you are going to be faithful to me. And the Lord restored everything to him. The Lord brought back more than he had to begin with. Brought back more children to him. Brought back everything he had. The Lord was faithful to Job. Joseph was able to trust God in the waiting, and he elevated him to a place of authority above the whole land. And Abraham and Noah were able to trust God in obedience, and he made their righteousness shine like the noonday. God's been showing me that he is a God that not only wants me to believe in him, but to fully trust in him. And the key to being able to fully trust through any of these seasons has to be intimacy with him. Right? If I'm not close to God, if I'm not spending time with him, if I don't live in the fear of the Lord, I can't fully trust him. It's impossible. And that's what he's showing me. He's like, Jason, I want you to trust me, but you got to grow closer to me. And it's kind of been a hard lesson for me because I gave my life to him when I was, 12. So I've said, Lord, I've followed you all my life. He's like, yeah, but you still got a lot to learn. So spending time with him, living in the fear of the Lord, turning away from evil, loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. The closer I get to him, the more I can trust in him. And God says, listen, if you come to this place where you fully trust me, listen to all these promises. I will make your paths straight. I will bring healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. If you come to this place of fully trusting me, I will give you the desires of your heart. I will bring forth your righteousness as the light and justice as the noonday. I will renew your strength. You will run and not be weary. I will bring peace to you if you only learn to fully trust me.